Very warm welcome to everybody. Happy New Year. I'm very honored to welcome you to our first mentoring circle, which is all about how to master the art of receiving feedback effectively. And I'm very happy myself to be co-hosting this tonight with Zura Samim, founder and CEO of HR2U. And I myself am a trainer and certified coach, and I work a lot on intercultural topics. So the agenda for today is we have 1 hour. Thanks so much for coming for this hour. We will start off with 2 talks, one by Zura for about 10 minutes and then one by myself. And then we will open up for discussion and hopefully lots of questions and lots of insights from you as well. And we'll try to close quite punctually at 7 or in the Netherlands also 8, just like for me, since I'm in Germany. A little bit about us, the mission of the Rising Network, which I love, is that the Rising Network and we want to empower women to realize their true potential, achieve balance and happiness in all areas. Our values supported us in that, and we really want to have a big impact on the everyday life of everybody that is in the network, and then carry that out and also have that impact on the lives of others. The Rising Network is all about collaboration and building a community with interesting people in it. Here on this photo, you can see some of our chapter leads. And this is also a great opportunity to become a chapter lead and then collaborate with the other chapters and chapter leads. Why does the membership work? I can only testify myself that it works very well. There is a great deal of networking, and I'm very proud to say that the Rising Network has achieved that despite the pandemic. So great events, even now in online times. A lot of learning opportunities, then the mentoring circles like now, so a lot of formats. And what I really like personally is that it's very forward thinking here, and that together there are new formats that get developed, for the current needs of everybody. And then you can really grow your self-confidence and improve your well-being through everything you learn here and all those lovely and inspiring people that you meet. Just like I said, the formats are manifold and very engaging. Today we're in a mentoring circle. I love master classes here. I love the workshops. There are full courses you can attend, challenges on Facebook, a very lively Facebook group as well. And of course, the annual Rising Festival, which will also take place this year online. If you are not a member yet, please consider becoming one. You get so much out of it, really. You get to attend events like this one, like the ones I just talked about. You can learn at your own pace. You can build such an interesting network with women that are really there to support you and understand you and help you with your challenges. So what I really like about this network is there are so many specialists in so many different areas, and you can just go ahead and ask them your questions. That has really propelled me forward, for example. You develop new skills, and also it's just fun as well. Really, it's an open and nice network that brings a lot of joy as well. So now, I don't want to talk too much. I'll hand over to my lovely co-host Zura Samim, and I'm really looking forward to her presentation.
Thank you very much for joining us. I'm quite excited to be doing this alongside Ava. So, and sorry about the typo. It's not about arty, it's about art of receiving feedback effectively. So first and foremost, now, one of the being a HR professional and working in organizations where you are constantly, you're always the one that gives the feedback. Now, one of the issues that we always find is all of a sudden people start reacting in a different mannerism and different way, and it doesn't help the situation up a little bit. So one of my slides is about controlling your defensiveness. Now, what that means is about you need to ensure that you have an aura of approachability. You need to have ensure that people feel that they can come and speak to you. Now, the reason I say this is because I've done numerous disciplinaries, numerous grievances, numerous meetings, and I think one of the most recent ones that I did about a couple of months ago, I had a disciplinary and the person shut down their laptop and walked away. Now, you can't control, you can control yourself when you're in the presence of someone, but now where everything's gone virtual, is automatically we're so defensive, and where it's so normal for you to shut down as soon as something happens, that shouldn't be continued on. Now, things like defensiveness, anger, justifying, excuse making will always ensure that your co-workers and bosses are not comfortable giving you feedback. So always try to be approachable, thank you, I understand, how can I improve? And that's part of the culture almost. Listen to understand. So it's about finding ways or techniques about effective listenings. And now there's a lot of courses online nowadays where it teaches you or other people about the effective of the art of effective listening and how you can listen to someone. And it's truly is an art. So ensure that you understand that. And sometimes self-teaching is the way forward. There's a lot of courses on YouTube, Google that you can read up on, and it's little practices, little habits that you change on a daily basis that you eventually becomes a big habit. I think there was someone that said to me, if you do something for 13 days, it eventually becomes a habit. So, if you continue for 13 days, after 13 days, it does become a habit. Using body language and facial expressions that encourage the other person to speak to you. So, I mean, having someone sit across the table from you, having all their arms crossed and just looking at you it's automatically puts the other person off from speaking to you. So ensure that your body language says exactly what you're meant to be saying. You're approachable, that you want to receive feedback, you're happy to receive their feedback. No matter how bad or good it is, feedback is always a constructive way to make you feel better, make you into a better person professionally and grow yourself. So just a tip. So it's true for your career growth and progression, the world views you in an opportunity for continued growth. So you're learning every day, and ensuring that you get the feedback, it helps you learn and grow and develop yourself personally. I personally love feedback, and I'm always a person that always goes back to that person, go, I said this in the meeting, what did you think? Do you think I'm along the right track? Or, open-ended questions where that person can give you feedback without them noticing that they've actively given you feedback. Summarize on and reflect on what you hear. So asking questions to clarify, this is my understanding on this matter. Do you think I'm along the right lines? Can you clarify this a little bit more? Again, asking open-ended questions. Your feedback provider will always appreciate if you're really hearing what they say. Sometimes you get this mannerism. So you say one thing and something else gets heard, and I sit back and think, did I just say that? Is that what I've been saying to her? So just ensure that you are open as a person that is receiving feedback. You're open to getting that feedback. It doesn't matter what kind of feedback it is, and ensure that you're really listening to what that person is trying to say, and don't start thinking different scenarios, different situations, and that kind of element. So again, it comes back to that little voice in your brain that's always, I've got a little Zora in my brain, it was always going at me, but there's always a but somewhere when I'm doing something. So even when I'm writing an email, I'm constructive of my own work. I spend a long time dwelling and adding more information. Sometimes that little bit of information suffices. sorry, I'm going off topic here. So just don't pay so much attention to your little voice in your brain. Sometimes your first instincts and the first bit of work that you or first bit of feedback you hear is correct. So paint a picture, focus on the questions to make sure that you understand the feedback. It's very important that you understand what that person's trying to say. Again, coming back to asking questions to clarify. And if someone said to me a couple of weeks ago, if you can paint a mental picture of what that person is saying, you know that that's how it's meant to be. If you can't paint a mental picture, then unfortunately there's a lapse in judgment somewhere from someone. So always trying to paint a picture. Ask for examples and stories so you know how that you share. So the way I would always go back around this is how I did this situation. This is what happened. What do you think I could have done different? So it's about picking someone's brain and what they would have done in your situation, and seeing different scenarios, even getting a pen and paper sometimes and going, right, this is what happened. This is the route that I took to make this decision, or this is the feedback that I give myself. And this is, if I took these other methods or approaches, it could have been a different way or format. So it's about questioning yourself and taking the time to actually listen to that feedback, analyze it, ask that person what they would have done differently. Behavior within work. I think one of the, as HR, I've always ensured that I'm approachable, that behavioral technique that you have, you're nodding, you're smiling, you're automatically agreeing, you've got open body language, you make that effort to find out about them, their family, their dog, their cat. So it's about ensuring that you're approachable. And that's not only as HR, everyone in the organization has to be like that, especially at the start of your career. It's so important that you are approachable in a mannerism that people can come up to you and say, that person has great work ethic. We've got this position that's opening up. He's got fantastic work ethic. We know he's approachable. We know he can take feedback. We know he can digest that feedback and turn it around and make into something positive. And he can learn the job as we progress him, and we can teach him the job as we progress him. So automatically you start developing yourself and growing yourself in life, which is fantastic. Again, ask for feedback. Don't ever be afraid to ask for feedback. I think one of the things that I find with people is they're quite hesitant to ask for feedback, and what if they say something wrong? Well, the only thing that you ever, if it doesn't matter if it's a bad feedback, it doesn't matter if it's good feedback. If it's bad feedback, over time you improve yourself. If not, you build that resilience. You're trying to work harder and harder. If it's good, fantastic. You're finding ways of improving even better than what you were doing. So feedback is so good for someone that wants to develop, that wants to grow, and that has that growth mindset, especially early on in your career. And tips for gracefully receiving feedback. Try to show your appreciation to the person providing the feedback. They'll feel encouraged, and believe it or not, you do want to encourage feedback. Even your manager or supervisor finds providing feedback scary. So, I'm always hesitant giving feedback. I feel like, what if I upset that person? What if they take it the wrong way? What if they misunderstand me? So there's always element of fear from the other side that is actually giving you the feedback. So never be afraid to that. Don't think you're the only one in that situation. It's quite difficult giving. It's easier receiving feedback than giving feedback. And I think Ava and I should do one about giving feedback, because that's even harder than receiving. So if you find yourself becoming defensive or hostile, practice stress management techniques such as taking deep breaths or letting it out slowly so it's not obvious at the time, or listen, absorb it, and then think about it. If you want to go back to that feedback, there's nothing stopping you. Hi Chris, hi Matt, hi Tom. Can we just reflect on the conversation we had last week regarding XYZ that we spoke about? Go back, revisit it. So always find ways of growing yourself. This is about you, no one else. And focusing on understanding the feedback by questioning and restating what you heard the person say usually diffuses any feelings you have of hostility or anger.
My talk will be put forward in two parts. One will be, I think, quite well fitting with what Zura just said. It's as if we had talked it through and come to the same conclusion. And I think that will be nice to see just from a bit of a different angle, because Zura has the HR experience and angle, and I obviously have the coach experience and trainer experience, where I sit down with people who may have a hard time receiving or giving feedback, and who want to learn how to get better at it. And then the second part is, since I am an intercultural coach and trainer, I couldn't help myself but throw a bit of intercultural look onto feedback in there as well. So I might speed through now, because there's a lot to cover in 10 minutes. So what I thought about when we discussed this topic in the group that created this mentoring circle was, well, what is the best outcome of feedback that everyone receives? What do we actually want to get from this feedback as the receivers? First of all, I think we all want to learn something, right? The best outcome for me in that regard as a coach is if people get concrete things to improve out of the feedback, if they get steps they can take, and concrete development goals to thrive for. For me, there is nothing worse than somebody going out of a feedback session without that clarity of what needs to be done to get better, right? Just like Zura said, this is a great opportunity for us to, propel ourselves forward and become better versions of ourselves. So we definitely want to learn something. We also, just like Zura said, want to show that we're engaged and approachable. So this is our opportunity to let everybody else know, to let our superiors know, or anybody who gives us feedback, that we want to listen to them, that we want to do our work better than we're currently doing it. It's a real opportunity to shine as people. I'm sorry, I have a bit of a throat problem tonight. And then we also want to go out of feedback ideally with some sort of self-development. And I find that feedback is an amazing opportunity for self-observation. So if we become emotional, if we become angry or sad or frustrated by feedback, if we manage to self-observe and then identify what triggers these emotions, what is my difficulty in accepting this feedback, in finding a way to get better rather than staying frustrated, that is actually something that can really, really enrich us if we go through that. Now, how can we answer constructively and go out of a feedback session with clarity? So how can we get all these positive impacts? I really like this framework of Marshall B. Rosenberg, which is called nonviolent communication. It's not necessarily only good for situations of answering to feedback, but I find it brilliant also for this situation. And it is summarized as OFNR. O standing for observation, neutral rephrasing. So that's basically what Zura said as well, right? Rephrase, really understand, do some active listening, so you really know what people want to tell you. Feelings, I'll get more into that later. That is the F. Needs is the N. And requests is the R. So, observation, rephrasing as neutrally as possible what the giver of the feedback has told you, lets them know you understood. And it also gives them a chance, you open them a door to clarify in case you misunderstood something. If you talk about your feelings in a neutral fashion, of course, not in an outburst, but if you mention your feelings in regard to this feedback that you just got, that lets the giver of the feedback know how what they said makes you feel. Of course, it depends a bit on the situation and relation, but I'll give you an example later, and you'll see how feelings can be mentioned even in a work setting in a very appropriate and professional way. Talking about your needs gives you a chance to ask for help, for training, for resources, for information. So if you get feedback, something wasn't done that well, and so on, you may want to use that talk and that specific occasion to ask for something that you need in order to make it better. And requests, you can and you have every right to also play the ball back. So not just letting people dump their feedback and everything that comes with it on you, but also to solicit concrete actions that help you with those above mentioned needs. Now, this is all very, very theoretical. I wanted to go through a concrete example with you. So somebody is in a work feedback situation and they did some slides and their superior tells them, well, the slideshow that you did wasn't quite done to the standard that our firm wants it to be done at. What would be a good answer in this nonviolent communication context would be first to observe and neutrally rephrase what you've just been told. So thank you, I've understood you. If I've understood you correctly, the task was not done exactly how you expected it, and the formatting of the slides was not in accordance with the firm's standards. Just so you can be sure that you really got what the point was. So you always have to do that as neutrally as possible, of course. What helps with that is if you imagine that you just want to make sure that you understand the essence of the content. And that shows the person that you're talking to that you really take this feedback seriously and you take it on board. The second one, feelings. Of course, this feedback comes as a surprise to me, and I feel sorry that this happened because I have applied all of my training on how to do really great slides and put a lot of work into this. I'm also a bit confused because nobody mentioned that there is a template for the slides since I've started here. So instead of bursting out, crying, or feeling too sorry for oneself, we can neutrally talk about these feelings. This gives the other person the chance to also see where you are at, to see that you're engaged, to see that you haven't done this out of sloppiness or anything that they might think why you have done it, but that you feel genuinely surprised in this example and sorry for what has happened. In this area, it's always really important to use I messages. There is no space for accusations. So you always say, I feel sorry that this happened. I am a bit confused. You don't try to make statements about how they feel or how they make you feel, but rather how you take this message on board and what it does with you. Then the next one is about the needs, right? So we had observation, feelings, now come needs. I think I need a template or some kind of introduction into the firm's formatting standards in order to not do the same mistakes again. Maybe this is a good opportunity for me to mention this. In general, since my superior quit just 2 weeks after I started, I think my work could benefit from a mentor within the firm or somebody who could give me some closer supervision and orientation. So I took the example, obviously, of somebody who's new to a firm and who doesn't have much guidance. But this is a way how you can turn the feedback that you're getting into an opportunity for also getting help with something you struggle with already. So, and it also shows that you didn't do your mistakes out of laziness or because you're not engaged, but that you need some kind of additional input to perform better. Those can be resources, those can be that can be training, it can be a colleague who's more experienced, it can be anything really. But what I want to make clear is not to be afraid to ask for help just because you got a bit of negative feedback. And it gets you out of this passivity trap, right? So we think of feedback as somebody gives feedback and somebody receives feedback. But obviously, if we want to grow from this, we need to get active. So thinking of what your needs are also basically forces you to think, how do I get out of this? So I got this feedback, but what do I actually need in order to perform better? And then there you have it. You already have a chance at finding some solutions. And last, requests. So this doesn't always apply, but quite often from the needs, you can then derive a request. So you could ask, could you please tell me who I can get in touch with for the templates if you don't know, or if the superior didn't right away say that. Or if you think if this is possible at all, or if you think this is a good idea, should I contact someone for closer supervision, or would you look into this? Just to really solidify that something happens with those needs that you identified. So you identified you need something else in order to get better, in order to do a better job. And with this additional request, you actually put a to-do on the feedback giver, on the giver of the feedback. So they then either know that you have a new to do on the list if they pass the ball back to you again, or they need to do something as well. What to avoid at all costs, obviously, Zora also mentioned it, accusations, outbursts, ideally any emotional outbreaks, but if you can't hold them back, I went back when I started my career, had a very hard time to stop myself from crying out of frustration. I really had to learn that. Then it's best to accept them, talk about them, and find words, neutral words that let your counterpart understand at least. You messages, avoid you messages, you think that blah blah, you said that blah blah, never good, always do I messages. And of course, avoid leaving with uncertainty on how to go forward. And then that leads me to the culture part, staying too much in your own culture when you're receiving or giving feedback from somebody who's in a different culture. I really like this metaphor of the hamburger when it comes to feedback in different cultures, because it just makes it so memorable. So we can think of 3 different versions of a hamburger meal when we think of feedback. We can think of the full hamburger with 2 buns and a patty. We can think of the low carb version, or even just the sides. What do I mean by this? If we look at some cultures, for example, the US or the UK, feedback is usually served in a nice complete burger. You have the buns, which are a kind of nice message that you wrap around the patty, which is the actual critical feedback. So, for example, a boss might say to somebody, well, what you've done for this project is really great. We love having you on board. It's so nice that you're in our team. However, those slides were really lacking, and we do have a format template here, and you completely disregarded that. And then, but nevertheless, the project was really great, and we think if you just change those slides, it will all be perfect. I mean, it's a bit of a simple example, but you got it, right? There are the 2 buns that are kind of making this criticism patty a lot less heavy to digest. Then you have countries which are more direct, and they serve the low carb version. So they basically just put that patty on the plate and serve it up to you. I am from one of these countries, Germany, and we have somebody who's in the Netherlands. I don't know if you are Dutch, which is also a country known for its directness. I want to highlight that not everybody always fits to their country cliche, but a lot of times some of it is, or a lot of it still holds true. So in more direct countries, there will not be a lot of positive feedback before the criticism is served. So I have had bosses that would have just called me in and said, you know, those slides are not okay. Thanks, goodbye. And at least in Germany, everything that is not said is to be understood as positive feedback. So you only feel that you need to say the things that need improvement. And then you have extremely indirect countries. We can think of a lot of countries in Asia and a lot of countries also in Africa, which just serve the sides. So they will not mention the negative feedback at all. They will talk about other things, and you will have to read very carefully between the lines to know that your presentation was not okay. So they might just give the next presentation to somebody else. And all the while telling you that, oh, your presentation was really lovely and thank you for doing it and putting the hard work into it. So those are the countries that just serve the sides. And what I want to say with this metaphor, what I think is important to take away in our little talk here is that you have to be aware that who is basically giving you the feedback. Which country are they in? Which culture are they from? Are they already used to working with your culture? Or are they more in their cultural situation and setting? And so if a German person serves you the low carb burger, don't directly think they are rude or they want to hurt you. Of course, in my trainings, I always tell people when they give feedback, they should also consider this. And ideally, of course, people adapt in both ways. But sometimes you will encounter people that don't know anything about these cultural differences, and they'll just speak their mind as they are used to. And you need to know how to interpret that. So that was the little introduction into cultural differences in feedback.